Hey everyone, welcome to SPOILD, the spoilercast at SIFTD Games at SIFTD.net. Now, fair warning before we get into this episode, we're going to be talking about The Last of Us Part 2, and it's going to be a no-holds-barred conversation. So if you have not finished it or you don't want to know anything about the game, this is your last warning. Going once, going twice. All right, it feels good to be able to talk about this game. And alongside me to talk about it, we have Matt Kyle, who literally just finished it. He is coming in hot. What's up, Matt?
Hey, yeah, about 20 minutes ago. Like, credits barely finished rolling before I joined this call.
I like that.
A lot of credits.
I like how we have Mitch finished it days ago. I finished it like a day and a half, 2 days ago. And you got somebody who just is coming off it. I think that's actually perfect. So also along to talk about it is Mitch Sikorsky. What's going on, Mitch? The first of the three of us to finish the game.
Yeah, I mean, I've just been digging into the internet because I can't talk about it. So, like, what else can you do? Just go on the internet.
Yeah.
It's
and
gonna
that
feel
makes
good.
Me,
to
The Last of Us.
Yeah, that's true. It's gonna feel good to discuss this game openly. It was that was one of the hardest discussions we've ever had on Game Face, I think, as far as trying to dance around some of the plot points in this game because it's so hard to talk about them because they're so integral to what really makes this game so special. So this is a part of SIFTD's brand new podcast feed called SIFTD Radio. This is an audio-only show. We highly recommend that you sign up for the podcast feed. Just click that podcast link or tap down at the bottom of the player. If you're on mobile, it will pretty much set up the feed automatically. If you're on PC, copy the URL, the web address, not the code that appears on the page, and paste that URL into your podcast app, and you're good to go. And we'll be having Spoiled on here, SIFTD HQ, all of our audio-only content. So check it out. And with that, let's talk about The Last of Us Part 2 with no tethers. Let's start first, now that we've all finished the story. It's tough to even frame this because the game is really split up into two parts. And again, I'm so glad we can talk about this now. So basically at the middle part of the game, there's a confrontation. And then you start playing the game over from the perspective of at least what you believe to be the bad guy. So
Bad girl.
Bad girl. Yeah, so maybe we should give a quick plot synopsis. Essentially, at the very beginning part of the game, Joel is murdered by this group of people who used to be a part of the Fireflies, which was the group that was trying to find a cure to the pandemic. And of course, if you remember at the end of the first game, Joel storms in, basically kills everyone, then takes Ellie before they can use her to find a cure, which would have killed her. So this new girl, Abby, is actually the daughter of the doctor that Joel murdered. And she has been tracking him down ever since, trying to kill him. Now she's much older, much stronger. Holy cow. In the first game, she was like a teen maybe. What, about 13 probably?
Ellie? Yeah, she's 13.
No, not Ellie. Abby in the first game.
I think they're just polar opposites, so I'm pretty sure they're around the same age.
In the flashbacks, she's older.
Yeah.
Probably like 15.
I think Abby's a little older.
So she'd probably be like 20 at the time of the game.
Yeah.
Like I think Ellie's like 18, 19, and she'd probably 20, 21.
Yep.
Yeah.
So Joel and Ellie are living in this homestead, essentially, with a bunch of people. They're living a pretty good life. And then Abby...
Which we saw the beginnings of in the first game.
Yep, absolutely.
Jackson.
And then essentially what happens is Abby and the Fireflies track down Joel and murder him brutally in front of Ellie and let Ellie and Joel's brother go for the first time. And let them live. And then basically Ellie is set on revenge. She kills Joel. So she wants to exact revenge on Abby and the ex-Fireflies, and off we go. And that's really what kind of sets the whole plot in motion. So you play up to that first half of the game as Ellie, and then there's a confrontation where, to me, I thought the game was going to end right there because it was kind of all built up to that point, but it doesn't. At that point, you then kind of start over from day one playing as Abby, and you play from that other perspective. So now, Matt, now that you've played the whole game, what did you think about my assessment about maybe it would have been better if it ended at that kind of convergent point?
Could not possibly disagree more.
Okay.
I mean, I do think the game was too long. Like, you're right about that. But I think it was too long in the sense of gameplay. I got tired of doing the same thing over and over again. As a story device, having you play as Abby is genius.
Now, obviously, the reason they did that is to build some sympathy for Abby and kind of, and this is what I was getting at talking about the shades of gray, is that, you think Abby is the bad guy for the first half of the game, and then you start playing as her, and then they start to show you that she's actually not a bad person. You start to become sympathetic towards the character. Now, see,
you have the advantage there that like she kind of becomes not a bad person over the course of the time you're playing.
She does, but see, I had already got
as
that.
Mel says.
Yeah, I had already got that though at that point where that confrontation happens. I had already figured out that Abby was actually the good guy and Ellie was the bad guy. And you're right. I mean, they do a really good job of like pounding that home over the next 15 hours. Because just over and over again, and she shows mercy again, which I thought was pretty weird. And maybe we'll wait to talk about that a little bit. But yeah, I mean, it basically does a flip-flop, and what you think is the good guy becomes the bad guy, to the point where you eventually have a boss fight against Ellie, which I thought was kind of one of those watershed moments for the franchise. Mitch,
very clever.
Yeah, I was gonna say, can I hop on that really quick? Because I just want to say that is one of the. So I talked about in Game Face, there was moments I didn't want to hit a button. This was a confrontation I didn't want to happen. I literally
the boss fight with Ellie.
The boss fight with Ellie, because with the plot device, I was resentful to warming up to Abby until I did warm up to her by the very end of the game. But in the end, I still had my allegiance to Ellie. And so making that a boss fight, I actually really didn't want to do that. I was like, I don't want to fight her. I don't want to hurt her. And you have to. It's like just how the game works. But that was one of the moments I just did not want to do anything. I just didn't want that confrontation to happen.
By that point, I didn't like Ellie at all. She had become the villain long before that moment for me.
I was fine with doing that. My main problem with that fight is I have spent 30 hours hitting triangle to grab people I sneak up on, and now you want me to hit square instead? Fuck you.
That's funny.
Not to focus too hard on the gameplay, but come on.
Yeah. Well,
I was fine beating the shit out of Ellie after about 5 tries at that. I was like, yeah, you're gonna die now. I'm sorry.
That was kind of cool to see her as a boss battle, though. Yeah, you're like, it was nice to see oh yeah, this is like I would use this in this scenario. Like, oh, she's just gonna use her minds. Like, oh, I kind of know how that strategy would work.
It was fun to see kind of how scary it would be to actually have to fight her.
Yeah, to fight you in a sense.
She is basically as strong as you are when you play her.
Yeah.
So that was an interesting reversal there.
And
she's kind of psychotic through the whole thing too, which is great.
Yeah. But again, she had become the villain at that point for me. So that was, to me, was perfect. I was like, oh yeah, exactly. Like she should be like intimidating me and trying to scare me throughout the course of the fight.
Well, I don't know if I wouldn't go as black and white as villains or heroes in this game, because I don't think there really are any. But I would say that by the end of Abby's section, you have probably come to the conclusion that Ellie is a worse person than Abby is.
Yeah, I guess that's what I would say. Isn't that kind of the barometer that we're going by in this world?
Yeah, I think that's fair to say, and I think that I don't think Mel's wrong when she says that Abby is a shit person and has always been. But I think we see her turn a corner on that over the course of those 3 days. And by the end of it, it's hard, even if you still are in Abby's corner. And I know some people who do remain in Abby's corner, or not Abby, or Ellie's corner, no matter what. Ellie, Abby.
Didn't Mitch say that he still is in Ellie's corner?
Well, I mean, at that moment, by the end of the game, I was wanting her to get. I was wanting her to find forgiveness. I wanted her to find her closure by the end of the game. But at that moment, I just didn't want to fight her because I still cared about that character. I may not agree with the decisions that Ellie made throughout that time, but I still cared about that person, and I didn't want that person to die.
Yeah,
but you knew she wasn't going to die. See, that's the other kind of issue with that plot device, is that that those stories at some point have to reconverge, and the characters that are going to be in that scene, so that they're going to survive up until that point no matter what.
Not always. I would say in this game specifically, I would say that this is more of Abby's game than Ellie's game, and so I was thinking like Abby would kill Ellie, and that could happen. They killed Joel. I mean,
but no, Mitch, they have to make it to that scene again. You have to make it back to that scene where it all stopped, and then you start playing as Abby. All those characters have to make it back for that scene still. You know that.
Yeah, but there's only one character that fit. Tommy, you know you're not going to kill Tommy in that sniper section. But that's it, really.
I guess I'm talking in regards to the confrontation with Ellie. Like, she could have killed Ellie. Like that I did not think cross my mind to not think that they wouldn't kill Ellie.
But how could he kill her if she has to be alive for the scene at the end?
No, I'm talking about Abby.
Oh, is that after?
Yeah, it's after
after they finally loop back around. That's right.
You switch to Abby after she shoots Jesse and is holding Tommy hostage.
Right. That's right. Okay.
Yeah, and then that battle sequence happens when you take over as Abby. So I didn't want Ellie to die because
Ellie could have been killed in that.
I would have been surprised.
Definitely on the table, and with that game, it's absolutely on the table. I would say I didn't think necessarily because there's a lot more narrative work to do, like just in how storytelling works. But I mean, just the way that this game. I mean, Naughty Dog does this a lot anyway, but like this game in particular, like death in this game. It happens, it's over, that person is gone, and there's no drama to it. There's no like build up. There's no like satisfying death scene. It's just, they're just gone. And like, you know, they could have played it that way with Ellie and Abby if they wanted to, and they didn't. But like the risk, I thought the threat was still there. It felt like this threat was still there because I didn't really know what they were going to do. So I give them credit for that. I also think,
I mean, no character's safe in this. I mean, at the end, it's just a bloodbath. No. Literally, everyone is killed in like 90 minutes of game time.
And it's a little Shakespearean in places.
Yeah, I mean, you can just go down the list. Like, everybody just dies in like 90 minutes. And it's just so random. Like, that's when they replay that scene and Jesse comes through the door and gets shot in the head. Yep. Like,
I mean, you gotta say, Jesse is the prime example of saying nothing is left, like they died and that they have to move on. Like there's no time to remorse for that person. She could say one word and say Jesse, and that's all she had to say in that moment to say remorse for what happened to him, because there's action happening. Like someone else's life is at risk right now. So it's one of those where it's just like death can happen at any moment.
Yeah, and I also like the recontextualization using the non-chronological storytelling. Like it's not really a big deal when you kill the dog when you get in the aquarium as Ellie. But by the time you catch back up to that moment, or the moment after it, and you find Alice's body, like it's a completely different thing. Like
because they built the relationship between Abby and the dog.
Yeah, and everybody in the dog. Like it's and I like Owen a lot as a character too. Like I liked Owen before I liked Abby. Because Owen clearly wasn't in with this shit. Like, Owen just wanted to go to his aquarium and get
Joel
away.
is killed, he was kind of
the one who stops them.
Yeah, he's the voice of reason in that whole scene. How do you guys feel about, so Abby lets them go the first time, and you know the old saying, fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me. And then later on in the game, Abby has another opportunity to end Ellie's life and lets her go again. How do you guys feel about that? That to me, I don't know. It didn't add up.
I think it was a powerful moment. Like, you know, throughout that entire adventure, you were playing as Abby with Yara and Lev and kind of trying to find her route of trying to get out of the rut she was in, which was the darkness of the revenge and losing everything in that process and trying to say, how do I move on from this? And she kind of found something through Lev and Yara. And even though Yara died in the process, the moment I think it really was magically hit was when she held the blade to, I think it was Dina's throat, and and Ellie said she's pregnant, and she said the words "good," and you can see her face of like, I'm pure revenge right now. But it took Lev to say, Abby to say, I'm not this person anymore. I'm not that piece of shit that Mel told me I was a while ago, because I have found redemption through these people that I would never have thought I would ever find the light to. And so I think it worked in that moment that, you know, if she didn't have
I think that moment is very earned.
Yeah. No, I think it is, but I just think I don't know. It's just weird that they kind of went to the same plot device twice. And then for her to make the same decision twice after she got burned, making that decision the first time.
Yeah, well, that's what makes that decision hard. Like, yeah, that's why it's a significant moment, is because the last time she did that, it came back to bite her. And now she does it again because she's changed over these 3 days, and it does come back to bite her again because Ellie goes down and finds her again. Like but the trick is, like, in that world, it's pretty reasonable to assume that you're probably never going to see that person again. And Ellie is just really contentious about things. And of course, from a larger narrative perspective, if she hadn't let Ellie go, she would have died on that pole.
Let's actually talk about Ellie. I feel like we're talking about Abby too much, because one thing I would say is Abby's
the big surprise. So
yeah, I would also say
and the one thing we really, really, really couldn't talk about.
Yeah. I get why we talked about her first, and I do feel like perhaps if there is another game, it's probably going to be around her. I mean, she and Lev basically just took Joel and Ellie's place. I mean, now
I would absolutely play a game with her and Lev.
Yeah, I would too.
I'd be into that.
They've got the grizzled veteran with the young preteen, and she's the mentor, and now it's the whole cycle is just kind of repeating over again. But so anyway, let's talk about Ellie, because Matt, you just mentioned her anger and her rage, and a big part of the game. First of all, I do want to say that when Joel died, I was devastated, but I was very pleasantly surprised to see that it wasn't like he had died, that you end up getting to like interact with him. Like the scene in the museum with the spacecraft, that scene is just freaking amazing. I didn't want it to end because I thought it was going to be the last time those two characters were together.
Yeah. It reminds me of The Last of Us Part 1. That's what makes it so special.
You spend a lot more time with him.
The scene in the museum with the dinosaurs and the space stuff is one of my favorite scenes in all of video games.
It's amazing. It really is. Like, it just, it's really heartrending. But anyway, Matt, something that you said about Ellie kind of sparked me off in this direction to talk about her, and that is her rage and how just insane it is. And a lot of the game, like in the flashbacks, like it goes to show her relationship with Joel before he died, obviously. And like their relationship wasn't good. Like I don't know. And I know part of it's probably she's trying to make up for the fact that they were on the outs when he died. I don't know if that, but is the anger rationalized? Because she goes crazy. I mean, it really gets, it became kind of absurd to me. Like towards the end of the game, I'm like, really? Like, you're that angry? You guys weren't even like that close anymore. And then they do use that scene at the very end where he's having the coffee to try to show that she was trying to rebuild the bridge. How do you guys feel about all that?
I think that's the whole point. Like, there's people that don't understand why she lets Abby go at the end, and they're not understanding what that scene is. She's not consumed with rage because they killed Joel and that she lost her father figures. That she's consumed with rage because she's angry at herself, because it took her so long to finally agree to start trying to forgive Joel, and she did it the night before he was killed. So the whole roaring rampage of revenge she goes on is not really to avenge Joel. It's to try to like take revenge on herself, basically, because she took so long to do that, and then it was taken away from her. She can never have that closure with him, and she could have if she'd gotten over it faster. Not that she should have, because what he did was to take away her choice, and that was a terrible thing. But like, it's just that lesson of, when she lets Abby go, it's because she sees that flash of him on the porch in her memory, and she kind of and also she's had her fingers bitten off, Lord of the Rings reference. And she, because of having lost those fingers, she loses her ability to play the guitar, which is her biggest connection with Joel. What a great scene that was, when you pick up the guitar and you try to play it, and it just sounds awful because she's lost her fingers.
That was one of the
she loses everything
that made me cry
from that.
Really great.
I couldn't. It was so powerful. And to piggyback off Matt a little bit, of in a sense, you could also relate and say that she was angry at them because they took away that moment from her, that opportunity to forgive him. Like,
but I think she obviously you're mad at the guy who killed him, but like, I think she's mad at herself. It was never about Abby. It was always about her rage at herself and trying to direct it outwards, because she didn't know what else to do with it. And in the end, like in Game Face, I made the note about how when she plays like the music and plays the music on the guitar, like it's a really nice kind of narrative theme of these horrible people, these people who do these terrible things, still can create these beautiful things, whether it be the moments between Dina and Ellie, or Ellie playing the music, or Joel sculpting the horses you find in his house when you look through his house after he dies, or even Jesse and Dina creating JJ the baby. And by the end of this, because she gives into this rage at herself, because she doesn't think her life matters unless she sacrifices something, unless she dies early. She loses all those beautiful things in her life. She loses the ability to make those songs. She loses the baby. She loses Dina. She loses that house, that home that they had dreamed of when they were walking through Seattle. And she leaves it all behind and walks off through a field to go God knows where. And like, that's why in the end, I think like the sparing of Abby is a great culmination of that whole theme. And also it ties in with the fact that this is one of the few times, not just in games but in storytelling in general, where an out of order, out of sequence storytelling is done correctly. Like if you told this story in sequence, it wouldn't have the narrative thrust and the thematic thrust that it does. Like the fact that you find out what happened the night before with her and Joel right at the end there. Like,
how about the fact that
that's the knife twist?
One of
it's
the
really
first
well
scenes
done.
they ever showed of this game was one of the last scenes in the actual game.
I was actually
waiting.
thinking,
I'm like, I guess it's not in. They're not going to.
That's what I thought. Yeah, I thought it was like one of those things where the trailer was like, yeah. But I kept thinking that actually, even the gameplay segments they showed were like 20 hours into the game.
Yeah,
like, some of the stuff they showed,
they were.
You remember that first teaser with the guitar playing, but like the second thing they showed was Abby and Lev and Yara being like dragged and hung by the Seraphites,
and they just
introduced
like,
them
as
the
factions.
Fuck are these people?
Yeah, they just introduced them as like the factions.
Yeah. Well, that's where you also meet two of the big characters that carry the rest of the game. You know, they save her. And
it's a great example of how spoilers aren't spoilers unless you know the context. At the time.
Yeah, exactly. It's like people didn't know that like parts of the end of the game were right under their nose all along.
Well, and they also did a good job of tricking people. And I'll get back to what we talked about, but they did a good thing of tricking people, because the moment when Jesse touches Ellie and says, "You think you're going to do this on your own?" Actually, the trailer, that's Joel. So they purposely trick you in that trailer to say that Joel is still going to be alive. And so like that's where the spoilers, I looked back to see what they were when they got released early.
Did you go back and look at the spoilers after you had finished the game?
Yeah.
To see what people had posted?
Exactly. And so
was it all accurate?
The only thing was missing, they said that Abby was transgender. And I think they were just making that assumption because she was buff.
The way she looks. Yeah.
Yes. But there was a transgender character, and we'll probably get to that later. But they said that basically Joel gets killed with a golf club by Abby, and you play as Abby. But it didn't say when, and so I think the trailers kind of showed that you'd think that you'd be playing with Joel and Ellie for quite some time, but little do you know, you take control of Abby really early, and all of a sudden betray Joel, and you kind of feel like you betray Joel as the player. I think that's brilliant. I felt bad because I was like, why? I led him to this area and I just killed him. But
the expectation of playing with Joel and Ellie is weird to me, because I remember when they first premiered the teaser,
everyone thought he was dead.
And Shane and I even were like, "Oh, maybe he's dead." Maybe it's like her memory of him, or like a ghost or something. Yep. Like I never really expected that they were going to repeat it and have you play Ellie and Joel again.
Yeah, I wouldn't want that anyway.
No,
I didn't think that was going to happen either. And
I think this is just another example of like, okay, surprise me story. Oh wait, no, not like that. Like it feels like you didn't really want it to take risks and do daring things. You just wanted to like I don't know, have a twist ending somewhere in there somewhere. But I much prefer. I mean, obviously I like Joel. I love Troy Baker's performance as Joel, but we still got that peppered throughout the game. Like Shane said, like it wasn't the last we saw of him. He was still a significant presence.
He took like a victory lap throughout the game, which I was happy about. Literally, like I thought that scene, it had me all choked up because I was like, "This is it. This is our last moment with Joel or whatever." And then no, I was wrong. Also, I should mention in some interviews over the last week, Neil Druckmann said that for the first half of the game's development, Ellie killed Abby at the end of the game. And they said halfway through development, they said that they decided that it was not in Ellie's character to not have at least a ray of light. And so they decided that she would let her go. So initially, she killed her, which I'm glad that they changed it because the game is so bleak. It's like there are some moments
that's too predictable.
But,
that's too easy.
Well, and they also said in the development of it that they, like, when they decided they weren't going to kill Abby, they ended up not showing that scene with the flash of Joel on the porch. That it was just going to be her letting them go. And I think they said through playtesting, many people were confused and didn't understand of being like, you're just going to let her go? Like, what the hell happened?
She's killed everything the whole time for the last 3 days.
And they said the one flash was the thing that was going to make the difference.
Yeah, I think that flash subsequently, and then you see where the flash comes from immediately after. I think that's very important.
Very clever.
Yeah.
But to go back quickly to Shane, what you were saying about Ellie's rage, I think it's very surface level at the very beginning because you don't have the context of understanding of Joel and Ellie are having a falling out right now. You don't have that context until later.
Yeah, there's no reason to assume that.
And
I just thought it became unrealistic after 30 hours. I was
think
just like,
as the
really?
story
I've
went
never
on,
seen someone so pissed off in my life.
But I think as the story, as Matt has pointed out in regards to telling the story not in chronological order, is that those moments that they feed throughout it, you understand that there's much more complexity to where the frustration is coming from for Ellie, and that it's more than just surface level rage.
I think what I discovered with Ellie over time is that she is a teenager. And like, so when she finds out about the pregnancy, she's not like the grizzled, like zombie killer. She turns into like a 16-year-old girl who just found out that her girlfriend got pregnant. And that was one of the things that kind of struck me as on her character arc was she doesn't really grow up until like the last scene of the game. Like you never see any growth from her until that very moment.
Well, I think that's intentional. I think that's intentional, and it's also symbolic in the sense that she thought she was going to sacrifice herself to make the vaccine.
Yeah,
and her whole thing is she's angry. It's why she, that last scene with Joel, she's upset that like he's asking about being with Dina, that Dina would be lucky to have her because she doesn't think she should be with anything or anyone because she thinks she should be dead.
Like her purpose, she lost her purpose, and she wants purpose in her life. And even though and that's why I think the powerful scene with Dina and the baby and the farm and the first time is so powerful because she has everything. She has everything she wants in her life that would make any person happy, but she can't be happy. Like it's because the thing that's still eating inside her won't let her be happy. And she still doesn't know what her purpose is. She can't write music. Mm-hmm. Like you see in the diaries, she is writing lines about seeing Joel still being tortured instead of writing these beautiful lyrics that you can see in her diaries in the beginning of the game. So you can still tell that internally she still hasn't found that purpose. And it isn't until she lets Abby go that she says, now I need to find my purpose. And I think that's the symbolism of leaving the guitar, leaving everything behind to say, I need to take what I had, leave it, and now go find what's my new purpose in life because I need to move on.
Although you better be keeping those cards in your backpack because I spent a long time picking those up.
And Abby's coins, where did they go?
Yeah.
By the way, I would really like to play a Naughty Dog game that is like a superhero game set in the universe of those cards.
That'd be cool.
Those cards are pretty
Some of the characters
crazy.
Were pretty cool.
Yeah, some are pretty neat. Like I really like the space whale.
And all the fake punk rock bands in the game. Yeah. They just did a really good job just building the world in general. How did you guys feel about the bizarre love triangle between Owen and Abby? And what's Owen's girlfriend's name? Mel. Yeah. What do you think about that?
Well,
first of all, I think people were probably surprised to see Abby hook up with a guy, maybe? I was surprised.
No, I wasn't.
You weren't?
You could tell from the beginning she was in love with Owen from the start. So like,
the very first scene you play as her as, like, they're playing with that a little bit.
Yeah, like
but she was like resistant though. He was always the one trying to push the relationship, and she was always the one pushing him away.
Yeah, but then
finally in that scene, it just goes haywire.
But in
that had a relationship before
scene,
that. But they're together in that flashback to when she's very young, when she's young with her dad. And then the reason they break up is because she can only focus on training and becoming a super soldier, so she can basically get revenge on Joel for killing her dad.
Well, she's similar to Ellie, like literally. It's exactly the same thing. She could have it all if she could move on, and she can't. So therefore, because
the Wolves got a pretty good setup there. Like when you walk through the whole stadium and like look around, like all this set, like that's considering the state of the world, like that's a pretty sweet gig they got there outside of being at war with a bunch of crazy.
Also,
people.
like Walking Dead trope number like 54C. It's like there was Really, it's like they borrowed a lot of elements from The Walking Dead. I just think they've just got to a place where the post-apocalyptic zombie whatever, there just aren't that many new ideas out there.
I think that's more of window dressing, and it's more about the characters and what the story they're trying to tell. I don't think
I'm sure they say that about The Walking Dead too, and there's
Yeah.
a reason they've lost like 80% of their audience. So
Yeah, but
I
Druckmann's got more storytelling talent in his little finger than anybody making The Walking Dead right now. And I actually
the TV show is going to be good, I think, huh?
Oh, the Last of Us show?
Yeah.
Yeah, probably.
It's looking like it could be.
And then I'm interested if they're going to tell the story of like Joel and Ellie, like I wonder if they'll modify anything knowing where they're going in this part of the story.
He had talked about in interviews this week about a prequel as well, like that goes more into like how the outbreak started. So I don't know if he was like hinting at what the TV show is going to be, because he also said in that same interview that he hasn't even started even thinking about like the next game. He doesn't know if he's going to start working on a new IP instead. So,
I mean, my guess for the next game would be like you would focus on Lev and Abby going to that the Catalina place, but then I feel like one of the potential places Ellie is going at the end is to find the Fireflies again and see if they can kill her and make the vaccine. So you might see her show up. You might have a reunion.
Right, where she shows up and she's like, hey, I know that I can help you guys, and maybe that's how you say goodbye to Ellie, and then that just sends the franchise off on to Abby's shoulders.
Or maybe you'll get your wish, and then Abby and Ellie will hook up.
Yep. I'm sure that'll make a lot of people really happy. How about like now that you've played the game and finished it, what about all kind of the hype around all the leaks and maybe some of the like the review stuff that you saw before you actually played it? How do you guys feel about all that stuff now?
I mean, it hasn't changed too much. I mean, I didn't see the leaks, obviously. I didn't know anything about this game going into it, really, except for obviously the preview material they officially released. I saw all that. That's the only thing I saw.
I guess now we can disclose what we knew before we played, because our users had specifically asked us to do that, and I was going to wait till the end of the show, but now that you're bringing it up, we can talk about it now. So Matt, you can continue.
Yeah, I only knew what I watched the trailers that had been officially released, and that was it. Like I didn't know I didn't seek stuff out. I didn't get spoiled on anything. I didn't care really, but like, because one of the things I think is having looked at the spoilers and heard them from Mitch, like reading that list of spoilers that leaked and playing the game and like experience, like that is a perfect example of what I always say, that a story is more than its plot. Yep. Like the presentation of all those plot points is vastly more important than the plot points themselves.
Oh yeah.
Like it should be a good learning tool for anyone who did see all the spoilers and then played the game. Like, and I've seen a lot of people say, I did see the spoilers, but then playing the game was a completely different experience. And like, it didn't ruin anything really other than making me mad when I saw the spoilers.
My guess is the people who were angry over the spoilers, there's no changing their mind.
Some of them are
already irrational.
Yeah. Well, I said, like, one of my friends did ask me, like, why is everyone, he finished it and he's like, this was amazing. Why is everyone so mad about it? And I said, there's two groups of people who are mad about this. Number one, there's a bunch of straight white dudes who are upset that it didn't focus on them. Yeah. And two, it's a bunch of people that, like I said before, said, story surprised me. No, not like that.
Yeah.
So two different groups, I think, that are very. The reaction is actually relatively similar to The Last Jedi in that regard. There's people that are upset for like kind of like pseudo political reasons, and there's people that are upset because they weren't ready for this thing to challenge them in the way it did.
Okay. Let's move to wrap it up. I have 3 questions I want to ask you guys before we get out of here, but I think each one of these is probably going to generate a good bit of discussion. So the first thing I want to ask you guys is, what was your favorite character in the game and why? Matt, you can start.
My favorite character is still Ellie. I really like just sort of her sense of humor. I think she's very funny in a dark way. She reminds me of one of my friends who is similar age and like reacts to things similarly, which I like. She's also not as angry and murderous, but like it's still a parallel there. Like I identify with her rage about things she can't fix. I think that's one of the things that makes her a really interesting and compelling character, if not necessarily someone you'd want to invite over. is that like she does have those dimensions to her. She can be a monster, she can be a murderous creature, but she can play that guitar, and she can be a good partner to Dina, and she can carry that baby around the farm and pet the lamb and herd the sheep and all that stuff. And like there's she feels like a complete
She's domesticated.
Yeah. And I also liked her in the first game. I think she's, and none of this game, despite all the things she did and all the revelations about how she behaved with Joel and kind of where she left it through no intention. She didn't know he was going to die the next day, but none of that like spoils Ellie as a compelling and interesting character that I would still play more about. Also, God, thank God she had a switchblade. Like I really like that was one of my main things. I came to like Abby plenty by the end of her gameplay segment, but when I got control of Ellie back, I was so happy to have that switchblade back. Like
yeah, how did it? That is so
anymore.
Weird to have a game where you play it halfway, you can assassinate pretty much any enemy, and then you switch to a character where you have to actually craft everything to assassinate. I understand.
I know that's like
why.
that's a reference kind of like, yeah, that's how Joel played. Like, Abby plays a little more like Joel than Ellie did.
But Abby was more like melee brawler focused.
Yeah, and all I'm saying is like, look, in this world, how does everyone not have a combat knife? Like, well, especially her.
There were lots of absurdities.
Abby
like
just
that,
like they just hand out weapons on the way out. I'm just like, give me a knife, you fucks! Like what? Like that's the thing I will use the most. Like, come on.
There's
yeah,
stuff,
but I also think,
but
I also think Abby, like they balance it out with Abby with giving her a lot more firepower. So like including the crossbow where the arrows are more retrievable. So those are kind of your shiv. Like,
I also did miss the. I also missed the when I did switch to Ellie. I did find myself missing the incendiary ammo for the shotgun.
Oh yeah, man,
that's
so much
really
fun.
Nice to have. Yeah,
yeah.
It's
so
really
Mitch,
nice.
wait, we were getting off track. Mitch, what was your favorite character and why?
I like them all so much. I have to go with Abby. I think Abby, through her trials and tribulations, she evolved the most.
Yeah.
And I think I was not expecting to like her. When they did the flip, I was expecting to like, I'm not going to like this person. I'm determined not to like this person. But by the end of it, I think the reason why it worked for me was because of it. It was an interactive experience rather than just telling me the story about this person. And I think that's what makes this game overall just so powerful is because it's an interactive experience that this story works better because of it. And so I think the moments of even like when Abby was like looking at a ledge and it wasn't the sequence when she was going across the bridge and she was getting nervous, but if you just look down on a ledge, your controller shaked a little bit and you could actually hear her heartbeat go up.
Yep.
And
so
the lens lengthens too.
Yep,
like
that
it
too.
does a little vertigo zoom.
So I think I just connected more because of those elements and like I used to be a fear of heights and I just think they really fleshed her out to the point where, I didn't want anything to happen to either character, Ellie or Abby. And I think that says something.
And I think that's also good, like what Shane says about how Ellie has trouble changing and moving on and growing. Like one of the reasons Abby is able to win you over as a player and a viewer is because you have spent all this time with Ellie and she's not moving. She's struggling to be able to move on. That's the whole point of her section. And then Abby goes through a very kind of classic character arc of changing and growing and becoming better. And like after hours of Ellie sort of like kind of languishing in the muck, that's a very satisfying thing to go through with Abby.
Yeah, for
which
sure.
is another really smart narrative choice by Naughty Dog.
And I think on top of that, it's that, Abby is farther in than Ellie is in her recovery process.
Yeah.
Because she has actually gone through the killing of the murder of her father.
Yeah, she took her revenge.
It happened a long time ago.
Yeah, she took her revenge also, but also it didn't really fix anything.
No, it didn't fix anything.
I mean, actually, the timing is kind of the same, right? Because
it's like 2 months
Abby
later.
waited X amount of time to kill Joel.
She waited about 4 years to kill Joel.
Yeah, and then it took
her 4 years. Yeah,
and then it took quite a while before Ellie was finally able to catch up with her. So the timing was kind of interesting. Again,
I think it was a 2 year
time she finds
2 years
her
after on the farm. So it's about half the time.
And then the travel to get to Santa Barbara. I mean, you're probably looking at like probably close to 3 years.
3 years
at that point. Like, so yeah, there is definitely a because they said that Abby had been captured months ago.
3 months ago,
right? That's right.
Yeah, by the Rattlers.
Yep.
So
Well, my favorite character is Joel.
Even in death.
Seriously. I feel like he, next to Abby, was the other character that grew the most during this game. Even though he's killed at the beginning, they show you that he grew before he was killed. He had kind of transformed from this gruff kind of, I don't know, it always felt like there was like a wall around him before, and that wall kind of crumbled in this game, and you kind of got to know him. He learned to accept her sexuality, which was kind of like at the beginning of the game, you start hearing him saying, oh, well, you know, he likes you, and, you know, she knew then that she was gay. And the one scene where she's like trying to basically beat around the bush and be like, well, I don't know, Joel, I probably wouldn't like that guy.
Yeah, I mean, like, don't hold your breath.
Yeah. And then to see him kind of accept it at the same time where she accepts that she needs to forgive him as well. Like, as Matt said, the scene at the museum, one of the most amazing scenes I've ever experienced in a video game. Seriously. Just
I also
incredible.
I think you're right in that the old previous games, Joel would not have accepted the idea that he took that decision away from her.
No way. He'd have fought it the whole way.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
I think on top of that, to even piggyback on that even more, I think Joel would have not followed Abby to that house if he didn't let it, because he and Tommy literally are saying, like, ride back with us and fill up before you leave, because he believes people are good again.
Yeah.
Like, he doesn't have to have that barrier up to say, like, these guys, I need to check them out to make sure that, like, who's bad, who's good.
Yeah.
He lets his guard down really easy. Like, even
if you just played
Abby,
the first game, you can almost hear Tess yelling at him.
Yeah,
for doing that.
Well, I mean,
right.
that's half of the, like, there's a big complaint about that in with people that are upset about the story of being like, why did Joel let his guard down? It's because he spent 4 years.
He's been there 4 years
in society, and learning that he can let his guard down again. And, you know, obviously the one time he does, it bites him in the butt.
Yeah.
But in the end,
I do appreciate
it shows
that
growth.
Naughty Dog let us down easy. Like, obviously the death is a shock, but like I said, I was like traumatized when that happened. And I'm like, how does the rest of this game, like, how is this going to go? And then, you know, they kind of let you dovetail your way out of the relationship with Joel, but never let him go completely, right down to the very last scene. You see a flash of his face. So I think Naughty Dog handled that character, considering they kill him off in the first, like, act. I think they handled that character very, very well. So he was my favorite. Next
also
up,
with Joel, they start the first scene is with the guitar that he makes for her. The last scene is with the guitar. I thought that was really cool.
And I also like the mirror of one of the last things she says to him in this game is also okay.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the first game is the last line.
Yeah.
And this time she says it with a very different meaning. So
yeah, for sure.
I love bookends.
There's just all kinds of really clever stuff like that in this game, callbacks and other things like that. Oh, I also forgot to mention what I knew before I played the game. So I was 100% pure up until the week before the game came out, and an episode of Pactor Factor went on YouTube that talked about The Last of Us Part 2 leaks. And what happened was we vet all the comments on YouTube before they go live for obvious reasons. And I was vetting comments, and one of the comments was, they're angry because you play as Ellie and Joel's murderers.
Oh,
And
murderers. Okay.
Yeah.
They clearly had that a little wrong.
And I was very angry, but at the same time, I was like, I don't know if it's true. I hope it's not true. And then sure enough, it ended up that it was. So I tried to fight it when I first started playing the game, but obviously I realized very quickly that that was actually right. So some jerk ruined it a bit for me. Literally, I made it the whole time until the week before the game came out. And that episode of Pactor Factor went up on YouTube, and some jerk on there ruined it. So,
do you think it affected you in the sense of, I know you said it would have been perfect if it ended before you switched to Abby. Do you think that has a little bit to do with finding out that you switched to her?
Subconsciously, maybe it could be. But I'll be honest, like, I didn't believe it. Like, I didn't know. Like, only after I started playing it, I remembered the comment then. Like, I didn't kind of remember it when I was actually playing it at first. And then when this stuff started happening, I was like, oh, that little jerk. He actually was telling the truth, because a bunch of people tried to do it. There was like 5 of them, but 4 of them were just obviously they were just being like jerks and just making stuff up. And that one was like just straight into the point. And I was like, it like caught my eye. And so, yeah, it was kind of seated in the back of my mind somewhere, and it could have had an impact on it. In hindsight, like I obviously understand why they did it that way, but I think that was for me was almost like 20 hours. Maybe it took me a little longer to get to that point than other people, but I think I was around 20, maybe a little less at that point.
Yeah, you guys took longer on this game than I did. I was like at 21 hours, I was done.
No, I was definitely closer to like 30, 35. Like,
yeah.
Also, I compulsively have to look in every damn room.
Yeah, up until the
last. Like, I think it was like there were a couple moments where I was like, okay, I can move on. Or one time I accidentally moved on without wanting to because
there's a lot of points of no return that are irritating. Yeah, but also, like, I like to poke around on what's one of my favorite things in like kind of exploration games. This is one of the strongest things I think in like Bethesda stuff too, when they get it right, is I just like the environmental storytelling. I like going into the house and figuring out how the people in there died.
Yeah, because all the notes, every room, what I say is every room tells a story.
And like they all correspond, like it's very well done.
It's cool.
Yeah, and
every
even
room tells
in this
story.
one, not so much in the first one, but in this one, even the supplies you find them in places that make sense to find those things.
Yep.
Yeah, I really like that.
I get all the pills in the bathrooms. And,
like
I was really happy
scissors
to see
in drawers, alcohol in restaurants.
I was really happy to solve a safe combination without actually reading the note that was telling me how to do it, and it was the one where it was the anniversary. And I think I just saw the calendar
and just remembered it offhand somehow.
Well, no, I just saw the safe is in the same room as the bedroom with the calendar, and all of a sudden there's 3 dates circled. Was a doctor's appointment, the day of day they're going to leave to like go get out of town because of the outbreak, and then the other one was their anniversary. And I was like, oh, you know what are the number combinations is their anniversary? And so like I had to do the math in my brain, but then once I went back and read the note, it told me what the anniversary date was, but I was like so happy I solved it myself. I did forget to say, for what I knew prior to, I was similar to Matt. I literally only watched all the gameplay stuff. I didn't know any of the stuff. I looked at all it post. So
okay. Next up, favorite weapon. Mitch, you start.
I gotta go crossbow. I loved that crossbow. It was just sad. It was, I just love bow and arrow. Like I shot bow and arrow as a kid constantly. So I always like the craftsmanship and the artistry of doing it itself. But I choose the crossbow over the bow and arrow is because the crossbow was a little easier to claim your arrows back. And it was extremely easier to aim with and a lot more satisfying.
Yeah. Did you ever get the really expensive scope? Did you upgrade it all the way?
No, I couldn't. I didn't.
I never did spring for the scope on that thing.
What I did was for like my playthrough
Did you, Matt?
Yeah.
Yeah. For me, what I did with my playthrough was I took like each weapon and I kind of picked like what is the most best attribute about that weapon. So like shotgun, I'm like, okay, increase power. Don't care about capacity. If I have a rifle, I'm going to care about accuracy. So I like picked a certain element in each one. So I had a wide range of weapons to pick from, and it kind of worked out really well for me that way.
Matt, what's your favorite weapon?
The weapon I use the most is the pistol with silencer, but I think my favorite weapon I think is Abby's rifle once I put the scope on it.
Okay. You mean like the semi-automatic?
Yeah, the
almost
long rifle that she starts with.
Nice.
Yeah, the long rifle.
The rifle she starts with, like out of the very
I think that's basically the same standard rifle, except it can do a 3-shot burst instead.
Yeah, I never upgraded to that. I did the.
I didn't do that either. I didn't think it.
I did stability. My upgrade priorities was always stability. Stability first, damage second, and then scope. And then I didn't care about capacity at all.
I always went with ammo first because I was always counting bullets. But my favorite weapon...
The capacity didn't enhance how many bullets you could carry, just how many the clip could hold. I didn't have reloading wasn't a problem for me. I will say this. I'm not saying I'd be better in this situation than either Ellie or Abby were, but I guarantee you in that situation I would find a way to carry more than 18 fucking rifle bullets.
I mean, there's all kinds of weird contrivances like that in this game, like most video games. It's just.
I mean, I know it'd be too easy if you did it. That did got me more ammo than that, but it's just like at a certain point, I'm just like, just grab a handful and put them in the backpack. Like I don't. It got like only carrying like one magazine and then a spare magazine seems like not too much when you're up against the hordes of the undead.
You'd think. My favorite weapon is Ellie's long rifle because it is just a death bringer. Literally, even after you've upgraded like 2 of its attributes, you shoot someone with it. Like you shoot someone in the arm, their arm falls off. You shoot someone in the leg, their leg explodes and like falls off. It's basically, even at the beginning of the game, as long as you don't hit like their hand or their foot, it's like an instant kill. Because if you hit their leg, it'll literally blow their leg off and they'll bleed to death. So it was just, I wish I had more bullets for that by the end of the game. They were very stingy with like expanding how many bullets you could get for it. But man, like if I was ever in a bad situation and I'm like, oh crap, I'm running from like 5 guys, I'm like spinning around, I'm posting up behind cover, the first gun I'm pulling out is that long rifle. Because I know if I land one shot, if you hit him in the chest, it'll like just rip half of their chest off once it's all powered up. Like I loved it, man. The thing was
I would say if there was an Ellie weapon I would pick the long rifle. Absolutely.
It just tore through.
It was great. It was great.
I barely used that gun, and it's funny because like I think the damage upgrade for that is the last weapon upgrade I did in the entire game, like in Santa Barbara. Man. And then when I shot a couple guys, I was like, "Oh, look at that! It rips limbs off when you upgrade that." I guess, but you know, something
you really
for New Game
get
Plus.
To see some of the great gore in the game too. Whenever you do that,
something for New Game Plus, I guess.
Yep, absolutely. All right, so we're gonna round it out the show with everyone's favorite moment from the game. It can be a gameplay scenario, it can be a cutscene, anything. Matt, start.
Definitely the museum.
The museum, yeah.
The museum with Joel and Ellie. Maybe, and if you want to get more specific, probably when she comes out of the clearing and sees the dinosaur statue and goes, "It is a dinosaur."
Yeah, and then you can run up on the dinosaur and dive off of its head.
That's what I did. Yeah,
that whole scene, and you're jumping off, and you see him like the parent down on the ground, like watching.
Die.
It's awesome.
And it was just like that moment of like, "Did good, Joel."
Yeah,
like you nailed it
again. Right, something you'd never think that he would do in the first game. Just another kind of window into who he had ultimately become. Mitch, what about you? What was your favorite moment?
Mine would have to be the Abby Ellie fight.
Which one?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I should clarify. The first one. The first one inside the boss battle inside the theater. I think it was just, what a way to like go through another character's shoes and then have to fight the one you care about. And like, you don't want to do that. And then I think also like understanding, Ellie, so you kind of can understand her strategy was kind of clever too, of a way of not like saying this is how you beat the boss battle, is like you should know because you played as her. And I think that's really clever as a game mechanic and a way to like not spoil the beans of like how to beat a boss, but yet how to do it.
Yep. My favorite moment was the boss fight in the arcade. There weren't many boss fights in this game at all.
Oh, where you fall into the basement?
Yeah, that's the one when you get the boat.
And the boss just starts
Ellie
smashing through the arcade machines. That was like the most memorable gameplay section for me. And since you guys kind of picked story moments, I thought I would kind of bring up the one moment of actual playing that really stuck with me.
What about the mecha? I want to call it the mecha fungi beast, which is like the hospital basement with the like 4
the patient 0 basically.
Basically. Like that reminded me of Resident Evil.
Got a little Resident Evil-y. Yeah,
that was a lot Resident Evil-y. Yeah.
But the one
I was
cool
like,
thing was
the T virus. I expected Leon to like bust in through the side door or something and like.
But the one thing I will say is, did you guys? So when you're running away from it, the first time when you have to go through all the different doors, and it's like
a lot of the chase sequences are really good.
Well, did you run into the moment where? Because I did, where you could have taken a left and I didn't see it, and I went straight ahead for a door and it wouldn't open, and I freaked out for a second because the door wouldn't open, because she does a sequence where she tries to open it just won't open. And then she turns around and you literally have to take that right as fast as possible, and if you don't do it soon enough, then the monster's going to get you. But I just got by and I was like, oh my god, that was thrilling. Of like
a lot of the chase sequences were good.
I did. I think that's supposed to happen. That
was kind of it was. Yeah, that was kind of the
most
closest
people I
thing to a
talked
set
to said they
piece
knew
in
to
this
take
game.
a left. They just didn't even go straight. So I was surprised.
I had the same. I had the thing where the door wouldn't open, and then I'm like, oh, there's no way. And then of course he conveniently had taken a little longer to get down the hallway so I could make it to turn back down.
Yeah, they make him pause or whatever.
But he does grab you through the door, I think, when you go through that last door there.
Yeah, he does.
So it's a good sequence. It just, I don't know, like there's a moment there where I was just like, this doesn't feel like this game, really.
Right.
It feels Resident Evil-y, but like it's okay.
I mean, the game is way dialed back compared to like Uncharted. I mean, you think about some of the sequences in those games, there's really nothing. There are no real set piece moments in this game. There aren't really a lot of boss fights. It's just
not a ton. It's like some horse riding stuff and some stuff where you're on the
Jesse driving sequence.
The driving sequences, yeah. It's just like also like you can't resources are so limited in this that you can't, it's not, you can't really do what Uncharted does, where like when a big sequence happens, like sometimes they'll just completely take ammo limits away from Nate. Like you'll just, you can shoot forever kind of thing.
Which they kind of did in that boss battle because they had ammo everywhere. Like
they did
ammo and health.
They give you the resources to deal with it.
Yeah, and I think the one thing is, I think in the context of in the world, it kind of made a little bit of sense of saying like these were there for that long that they kind of fungied together. That it seemed within the reason of this would make sense.
Yeah, it does make me wonder. Like I feel like if you were to do another game, you could do another time jump so that Lev is closer to like 20 or so. And it'd be interesting to me to explore the idea that like worse stuff happens the longer you let that fungus grow. And like, maybe not everything becomes a giant monster like that thing, but like,
they find an area that's just been untouched and it's grown for like 10 or 15 years. But there's a creature that's like the size of a building or something.
Yeah, stuff like that. Because like the thing you also have to remember, and you're going to get into a little biology here, but I had some friends that took AP Bio and biochem and stuff, and like one about a professor, and you see there's this quote that's similar to this that like floats around as a meme or whatever, but it's basically like there's one professor who was like, we don't know what fungus is. Like, it's not alive, it's not a plant, it's not an animal, it's something else.
What is it?
We don't know what it is. Do not ask me to explain mushrooms to you. Nobody knows what the hell we share the
alien life form.
And like they can be beneficial, they can be delicious, they can kill you in seconds. They can be the size so small you can't see them. There's a mushroom, a fungus might be the largest living thing on the planet, like a giant colony that takes up square miles, and like they're very weird. And of course, the cordyceps fungus that is the thing that causes this plague is real. It's a real thing that takes over the brains of ants and makes them climb a stalk of grass or whatever and hold on to the end of it, and then it busts out of their head just like in the game and sprays its spores out. That's how it proliferates.
Infects colonies. It can.
The only thing that Naughty Dog did was make it infect us.
Right.
So that's also why it looks like, I was saying this last night to one of my friends, like, I don't get grossed out by stuff in games, especially like the gore in this game doesn't bother me really. No game really bothers me. I've seen too many R-rated, like, horrible movies for that. But like the thing that bothers me like physically in both Last of Us games is the way they render like the big chunks of fungus that grow on the wall.
Yeah.
Like the big slabs of it, like the slices of it that come up. Like I can look at that and I know what it would feel like to touch it. And
it grosses you out. Yeah.
I just hate it. And it's like such a testament to how good those graphic artists and those texture work is. Like they just nail it every time. Like it's really, I mean, I'm grossed out in a way that makes me admire Naughty Dog. I should be clear, but like I wouldn't want them to change it. But like it is really gross.
So sequels, guys, to close out the show. Should there be a sequel? And if there is, what should happen? I'll just start by saying I don't know that there should be a sequel. All the characters that I cared about are dead. Ellie might as well be dead. So I don't know. I feel like they may have just capped it perfectly. So maybe I would say if they're going to do another game, a prequel might be something I'd be more interested in. What about you, Matt?
I don't think it needs one.
Yeah.
I
mean, they did a damn good job of closing it out.
I think we're going to get one because this thing is selling through the damn roof.
Yep.
But like if they did another one, I would like to see it focus on Abby and Lev and like kind of what the Fireflies have become, and maybe have Ellie as more like a cameo appearance, or even a premise you could use for that would be like Abby and Lev reach that Catalina place, and at some point they find out that she knows the immune girl. And they're like, well, you got to find her.
Yeah.
And she's like, I don't ever want to see her again. But like that becomes sort of the question, like going out in the world to find, like, figure out where Abby or Ellie went. And like, you could kind of just sort of follow her trail of destruction. Like you will know Ellie by the trail of dead, like as you work your way through the Southwest or something. I could get behind that.
Okay. What about you, Mitch?
I'm kind of similar with you guys. I don't want one. I mean, Matt, to piggyback off yours, because it sounds really nice, it would be interesting if Ellie had a family and like would finally move on, and then be like, she'd have a dilemma to decide whether she would like to keep her purpose of humanity, of like the way she's live her life, or sacrifice it for everyone else. I think that would be an interesting play for Ellie as a character. But anyways,
that could also actually tie in with they could tie in with what I said about the fungus getting worse as time goes on, or like finding some horror. Like something happens to it that makes it worse or mutates it to be worse, and like the vaccine becomes even more important than it was. Like we need to do this or we are not going to live another 5 years as a species. And of course, like you say, Ellie has found equilibrium somewhere, and now you have to convince her to make that sacrifice again.
To stop doing yoga and die.
But yeah, I don't want a sequel. I really don't. I really think this is a book-ended story between part 1 and part 2, even though I thought part 1 was pretty good as it's a standalone self, and I didn't really think it needed a sequel. But I mean, if they make one, I kind of have faith in regards to the storytelling from this team, because again,
how could you not?
This thing is remarkable in so many ways that I can't even. I would love to see them tackle a new IP, because I think there are a lot more interesting stories they could tell with a fresh slate.
I mean, I think they will.
I don't want to come back to this world for another 7 years. I'm good.
I have a feeling
I would like to
see
this be
else in between, kind of like they did Uncharted. Like they did Uncharted.
I don't think we will see any
this.
more Uncharted games. I think they will do something new next. But I do think that this is a good series. If they insist on continuing it, I bet Sony will strongly suggest they continue it.
Yeah.
I would like to see it kind of continue this tradition of being sort of the swan song of the PlayStation it's on.
Yeah.
Like, the first one was like that. This one's like, it's kind of that thing. It's like, we're going to take everything we've learned about this.
Well, they better start working on it
and
now.
Out with a bang.
They better start working on it today.
Well, they
want to get it done in time.
Well, they kind of take what they learned from the previous game and kind of throw it in there, because they did the same thing with the rope for this one with Uncharted. Uncharted was the big thing, was the rope. So it seems like
which is hardly even used in this, by the way.
Which
it seemed like it was going to be such a big thing.
Did you guys ever have a thing where like there's a couple of like puzzles to get into like a room that's locked or whatever that I did, where I used like a rope to do like an elaborate swing thing. And then like after I finished it, I realized that there was just like a platform.
A really simple way to do it. Yeah. I did the same thing.
I liked the rope. I think it was clever. But
it is. They just
kudos for it being versatile enough to actually let me solve things the wrong way. Like
all the puzzle elements would just show up, and then they'd be there for like 30 or 40 minutes, and then you'd never see him again. Like the trip wires, which I hated, but then they disappeared and never came back. Like
I did that with like the first time you see them, like Dina says, like, you got to be careful in the tall grass. You can barely see him. I immediately turned left and exploded.
Me too. Same thing
I did as well.
Perfect timing. I think they maybe set it up that way, actually. But anyway,
I think the game overall did a good job of like introducing new elements, but not always having them stay there forever. So it's not like if you didn't like it, it wasn't that you had to deal with it.
Other than the grind of the constant murdering.
Right. I mean, the enemies never changed, but I think new elements like the tripwires, the rope is something that always they mixed it up to be able to like make it fresh for you as gameplay.
Yep. So there you go. That's The Last of Us Part 2, an absolutely amazing, incredible game that I wish was maybe about 10 hours shorter, but I still love the heck out of it, and I'm sure you guys did too, or you would not be listening to this episode of Spoiled right now. So thanks for joining us. This was actually the first time we've done a video game for Spoiled. All we've done are movies and TV shows so far. It's been funny.
Not a lot has come out that would warrant a Spoiled.
But
really.
My guess is we'll be having a lot more of these as the year wears on and all the big games for Q4 keep coming out. So I'm Shane Satterfield. You can find me on Twitter at Dinfire. You can find Matt Kyle at MKyle, MKEIL. And you can find Mitch at Mitch Sikor, SIKOR. You can find SIFTD at SIFTD Games on Twitter. And if you like what you're listening to and you're out there in internet land listening to the audio version on some podcast app, head on over to patreon.com/SIFTD and kick us a couple bucks. We have a bunch of other content that we do as well, and you might want to check it out if you may like it. So on behalf of my boys, had a lot of fun talking to you guys about The Last of Us Part 2, and we'll see you next time.